Hello everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome to my first ever YouTube video. I'm so excited to be bringing you guys this video here today because these are some of my favorite videos to watch here on YouTube. Today we're going to be talking about the best films that came out in 2018 in my opinion. Now I know what you guys are thinking. Jean, what are you doing bringing out this video today? It's halfway through 2020. Well, look, I was really busy last year, so I didn't get a chance to catch all the films that I wanted to nearer the end of the year. So I had a lot of catching up to do in early January, but I've done all my homework. I'm coming to you now with my opinions. I can't wait to tell you guys what my best films of the year were. So before we even get started, two disclaimers. Like I said, I wasn't able to see every single film that was released in 2018. Hell, I wasn't even able to see every single film that was on my most anticipated films of 2018 list. So keep that in mind when I'm telling you guys about these films. Maybe there are a few that I didn't get a chance to see that would have been included in this list. Hopefully there aren't too many. And secondly, this is based on my opinion, of course, so you guys might disagree with some of the choices that I've made in this list. You might disagree with some of the order, but that's fine. All you have to do is let me know down in the comments and we can chat about it because that's the spirit of this channel. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about my best films of 2018. Starting off, we have Widows, which is directed by Steve McQueen, who I'm a huge fan of. I really enjoyed 12 Years a Slave, even though it is a very grueling film to watch. So I was really excited to see Widows, which stars Viola Davis, who I'm also a really huge fan of. And I have to say, I had a great time with this film. I think what stands out the most are the performances here. You have Viola Davis leading the cast and she is just absolutely brilliant. She's brilliant in everything that she's in, but I just thought I would highlight her performance here because she's so good in everything that it's sometimes taken for granted how talented she is. But also a shout out to Elizabeth Debicki, who I thought was brilliant in this film as well. She toes the line between vulnerability and strength so well that she definitely stood out in the cast of already amazing actors. And of course we have Daniel Kaluuya from Get Out, and he plays a very different character here, so much more menacing and threatening and really kind of unlikable, but his charisma shines through and I really enjoyed his performance. He has one of the most blood-curdling scenes in the entire film. It's great. I think overall this film may have been overlooked because it doesn't quite deliver on the premise. And by the third act, we do get to see the women perform this last score that their husbands had planned, but it's not quite impactful enough. It's not quite explosive as a third act. And so I think the momentum of the film does kind of fizzle out, leading to a third act that doesn't quite meet the standard of the first and the second. But overall, I had a brilliant time with this film. I definitely think it's well deserved of this place. At number 9, we have WreckIt Ralph 2, or Ralph Breaks the Internet. I had a fun time with the first WreckIt Ralph, and I find that the more you watch it, the more little details that you actually appreciate about the film. But I will say that I'm not really attached to 90s or 80s nostalgia in the way that the film wants me to be. So even though I had a fun time with it, it was never really on my top 10 films of the Disney animated classics. But I have to say that this is one of the rare instances where the sequel impressed me far more than the original film. I had a fantastic time with WreckIt Ralph 2. Unlike my relationship with 80s nostalgia, I very much identify with the internet. I found the premise to be really interesting. And the internet didn't just act as a backdrop for Easter eggs and things to comment on briefly. It was an integral part to the story itself. I really enjoyed the return of WreckIt Ralph and Vanellope. I thought that they have a very interesting dynamic between them, and this film really dives into that and explores themes of friendship and self-identity, which is a really interesting take on the kind of adventure story. My only gripes with this film are firstly the lack of Fix-It Felix. He definitely gets less screen time in this one, which is a shame because I really enjoyed him in the first WreckIt Ralph. And secondly, the third act doesn't really measure up to my expectations. I really enjoyed the first two acts, so I was kind of let down by the ending, even though there was a really interesting twist on who the real antagonist of the story was. I just thought that the animation just looked a bit coagulated and didn't really measure up. But in terms of the film as a whole, I had a great time with WreckIt Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet. At number 8, we have Sorry to Bother You. And look, when it comes to this film, the less said, the better. I don't want to ruin anything for you guys. I don't want to influence your impression of the film before you've even seen it, if you haven't already. Just know that it is very different, very unique, and I highly recommend going to see it blind, no trailers, no synopsis, nothing like that. I had a fantastic time with this, and I was so surprised by each turn that the film took. I loved the performances here. I think Lakeith Stanfield was amazing and perfectly cast here, as well as Tessa Thompson and Armie Hammer. They gave great performances, and I just think the way that Boots Riley chose to tackle really important social issues in such a unique and interesting way was so refreshing and so memorable. That really wasn't a film that came out in 2018 that was anything like Sorry to Bother You. At number 7, we have Mission Impossible Fallout. Now, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol is one of my favorite action films ever. I discovered that film as a teenager who was inundated with rom-coms starring Katherine Heigl. I needed something different in my life, and along came Ghost Protocol and rocked my world. I was really excited to see Rogue Nation, which came out before this one, and I was slightly disappointed by that one. I thought that the story was a bit bland and it wasn't as memorable as Ghost Protocol was, in my opinion. But Fallout definitely comes close as one of the most memorable action films that I have ever seen. It is absolutely incredible, the stunts that are pulled off here and the action sequences. They are just amazing. I was on the edge of my seat literally throughout the entire screening of this film in the cinema. I had an amazing time with this one. I know that there's a running gag that Tom Cruise is out there trying to break every single bone in his body performing these stunts, but I think that his talent as an action star really shines through in this film. I think it's amazing that after so many years and so many installments in this franchise, he's managing to still captivate the audience. Ethan Hunt isn't really a character in his own right, in my opinion. He's more like an amalgamation of the best attributes that Tom Cruise has as an action star. If only we could get more of an interesting story and a little more character development from Ethan Hunt with the main course of action goodness, then that would be great. But as it stands, number 7 is Mission Impossible Fallout. I had a brilliant time with this film. Alright, so now we're dealing with some of my very favorites of the year, and at number 6 we have Green Book. So Green Book is a favorite of mine because of its exploration of a very different type of black character to the type that we would usually see in a film with this kind of commentary. Dr. Shirley is consciously always trying to contradict these stereotypes and stigmas associated with Afro-American identity, and he's always trying to succeed even in circumstances that are horrific and completely discriminatory against him. And then you have Tony, played by Viggo Mortensen, who's an interesting character in his own right. He comes across as so friendly and approachable, but at the same time holds his own prejudices and discrimination within him as well. And I find that by the end of the film, his story arc is actually more significant than Dr. Shirley's, even though they both go through a very interesting journey together. Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali are spectacular in this film, with Viggo Mortensen expertly balancing the comedic and compassionate elements to his character, and Mahershala Ali portraying this regal yet aloof type of character who still manages to be sympathetic, and the audience is still rooting for him. I very much enjoyed seeing their friendship grow. I thought it was so grounded and so realistic, and although it may not be historically accurate, the film was written by Tony Vallelonga's son Nick. I do feel that it made for a wonderful cinematic experience. At number 5, we have Klansmen, and this was one of the first smaller films that I got to see last year. I found this film to surprisingly take the place of a lot of the bigger films that I really enjoyed in the first half of the year. This film is another one that tackles the race relations in America during the 20th century. And much like Green Book, it also focuses on a character who doesn't quite fit the status quo of the community that he belongs in. I do think that BlacKkKlansman is more impactful than Green Book. It does draw upon the events of the past and kind of creates parallels to the issues that people of color are still facing in the US to this very day. My first thought coming out of this film was that Adam Driver deserved all of the awards. I found that his character went through so much emotional and psychological turmoil in this film that his arc made for one that was more significant than, say, Tony's in Green Book. However, a shout out also has to go to John David Washington, who had a very difficult role of playing someone who was both very much within the Black community and supported the values and the changes that the Black community wanted to see at that time, especially under the Black Panther movement, but then also someone who believed in justice and who really wanted to serve his community as a police officer. Overall, this is a film that stayed with me throughout the entirety of the rest of the year, and I highly, highly recommend it. At number 4, we have Avengers Infinity War. Now, let's be real. This was not just a film. This was an event of a lifetime. I was really looking forward to this one, and it did not disappoint. And I just found it amazing how excited everyone was to celebrate one of the biggest achievements in cinema as of late, which is creating this 10-year arc with so many different characters, so many different storylines, being so successful within the comic book movie genre. I think what Marvel and Kevin Feige have achieved is absolutely brilliant, and it gets taken for granted often because we've gotten so used to 2 or 3 Marvel films coming out every single year, but it really is truly an amazing achievement, and I absolutely loved everything that this film stood for, both on and behind the camera. I will say that this film falls short of my top 3 because firstly, it focuses on characters that aren't really my favorites, and I understand why. But when you're spending a lot of time with characters like Scarlet Witch and Vision and Gamora, instead of my favorite characters like Captain America and Black Panther, I was a bit disappointed at how highlighted they were, especially because the previous films haven't really done much to develop them as characters in their own right, in my opinion. And secondly, this film wasn't really a complete film, so I was sold going into this that this film would be the amalgamation of 10 years of storytelling, when really it was just part 1 of a 2-parter. So I didn't really expect that going into this, and I thought that by the end of the film it did kind of leave a sour taste in my mouth, which brings me to my third reason, which is I hated that ending. I hated that ending. I loved it, but I hated it because whilst everyone else around me was crying and I don't feel so good, I was just like, no, we know that Spider-Man is coming back. We know that we're going to see another Spider-Man film. We're going to see him in Avengers Infinity War Part 2, now known as Endgame. Like, we know he's coming back. So why are you guys crying? My friends were genuinely so upset when the ending came. I was just like, no. I saw Bucky die. I was like, no. So I was really angry because of that ending. So as a result, I can't say that this is in my top 3. But I love this franchise, I love the cinematic universe, and I am counting down the minutes, I'm counting down the seconds until Avengers Endgame. Make no mistake. And at number 3, we have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. What a joy this film turned out to be. I didn't expect it, but it quickly became my favorite animated film of 2018 and one of my favorite comic book movies in general. This film is so visually spectacular. It's so unique. The animation style that Sony created was just brilliant. They could have gone and created an animated film that had the same storyline, but just the same old animation that we see from various other studios, but they didn't. They took risks. They took artistic license with the characters and with the scenes, and it created something absolutely just stunning. Stunning. I love this film so much. I think it's well deserving of all of the accolades that it's getting at the moment. First off, you have the visuals, but also the characters. Miles Morales makes his motion picture debut here, and I can't wait to see more of this character because I absolutely fell in love with him. I loved Peter B. Parker, and I really enjoyed the other characters as well, like Spider-Woman and also Spider-Man Noir. I thought Nick Cage being cast in this role was a stroke of genius. And also I love the music in this film and the soundtrack that came out with it. I was listening to the soundtrack for most of December. I really love the fact that the filmmakers wanted to create a soundtrack that would reflect the type of music that a teenager like Miles would actually listen to, and I thought they did a fantastic job with that. And also a fantastic job was done with the score. I believe it was done by Daniel Pemberton. Great job there. Some of the movements of the characters were really emphasized by that score. Just loved it. The whole thing from start to finish. My favorite animated film of the year, and that's crazy considering that this is the same year that Incredibles 2 came out. At number 2, we have Blindspotting. Now, this is another film that took me by surprise. Much like Green Book and BlacKkKlansman, it deals with social injustice and racial relations in America, whilst also bringing in comedic aspects and themes of companionship. Plus, while this film is relatively small scale geographically, as it's mostly contained in Oakland, California, it deals with some really big issues in society like gentrification and toxic relationships, and the differences in the way that people are treated if they're white versus if they're non-white, particularly within the judicial system. On top of that, you have these really cool, likable characters going on this journey. You have Rafael Casals' character, who's so electric and charismatic in his performance, and he definitely has attributes that borrow from the stereotypical black personality, which is really creatively explored in this film. And then you have David Diggs' character, who's more subdued. Both characters have breaking points in this film that make for some of the best scenes that I got a chance to see last year. Okay, so now it's time for me to tell you guys what the best film of 2018 was, in my opinion. And at number 1, we've got Black Panther. So, speaking of Oakland, California, I know it's become quite popular to hate on this film. At the beginning of 2018, this was such an underdog. No one knew how audiences would respond to a comic book movie with an all-black cast set in a fictional African nation. But $1.3 billion later and months of praise, we have the inevitable backlash. And especially because this film has been getting some awards recognition, people are out there telling everyone who will listen and some who won't that this film is overrated AF. But I'm still standing by this film because honestly, out of all of the ones that I saw last year, this is the one that stands out to me the most. So if you've been watching for this long, you may as well listen to why I think this is the best film of the year. First off, I'm originally African, and seeing sub-Saharan African imagery and iconography in a film that belongs to my favorite franchise of all time was such a memorable experience for me. Whilst I had a great time with the Deadpool 2s and the Ant-Mans and the Wasps of last year, it really stands out because of its beautiful costumes and amazing set designs. Everything just felt so authentic, mixing in traditional designs from all different types of African nations like Egypt and Nigeria and beyond. And of course, you have the amazing characters. I really love King T'Challa, who, much like Dr. Shirley in Green Book, plays a character that's very different to the conventional type of black character that we would see in films. He's very regal and stoic, and whilst this comes across as cold sometimes, he's definitely unique in his personality in the wider scope of film and also within the MCU. Then you have this spark of fun and sass brought about by Shuri and Okoye, who quickly became some of my favorite characters in the entire MCU. And then there's Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan, who is the best villain in the entire MCU. Some people might disagree. You're wrong. You're wrong. Overall, Ryan Coogler had a mammoth task ahead of him, and he did that. And now this is the 9th highest grossing film of all time, and that's just incredible. But for those of you who are huge Infinity War fans, you can sleep easy, because looking down at its little brother, Infinity War stands at number 4. So either way, Marvel is full of win. My sheer enjoyment of this film from start to finish, with every single character, every single set piece, is what makes this my favorite film of the year and the best film of 2018, in my opinion. So now that I told you guys what my picks were for the best films of 2018, I look forward to seeing your lists down in the comments below. If you had a fun time talking films with me, then please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you can catch some more videos from me very soon. With all of that said, that completes my first ever YouTube video. Thank you so much guys for watching, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.